Right, when you think Vikings, what comes to mind? Horned helmets, probably? Longships crashing onto English shores? Well, hold that thought, because what if I told you the most lasting legacy of the Vikings wasn't actually forged in the West, but in the massive, sprawling East? What if these Norse adventurers didn't just show up to raid and pillage?
Row harder, you dogs! Gods be with us!
But actually laid the groundwork for empires, shaping the destiny of millions and sparking a story that's still echoing in today's headlines. Yeah, prepare to have your understanding of the Viking world flipped. We all have this classic image of Vikings. Fierce warriors, incredible explorers, and the raiders who definitely left their mark on Western Europe. But that's really only half the picture. While some Vikings were sailing west, another wave of these Norsemen, often called Varangians or simply the Rus, were pushing eastward. They navigated deep into the river systems of what would eventually become Russia and Ukraine, and they weren't just looking for a quick score. They were searching for new trade routes, new allies, and, ultimately, new lands to call their own and rule. This isn't some forgotten footnote in Viking history, folks. This is the origin story of a seriously mighty kingdom, Kievan Rus. Picture this, a realm born from Viking ambition mixed with Slavic resilience. This kingdom would grow to be one of the most powerful and influential states in medieval Europe. Its story is absolutely packed with larger-than-life characters, epic journeys, and game-changing moments that didn't just define an era, but actually planted the seeds for modern nations. We're going to explore how these Eastern Vikings, through a mix of conquest, trade, and cultural blending, built a kingdom whose influence is still so clear, whose echoes you can still hear in the complex relationship between Russia and Ukraine today. This is the truly shocking Viking kingdom that birthed nations. So, the Viking expansion into Eastern Europe wasn't some overnight invasion. It was more of a gradual move, starting around the late 8th century. What was pulling them in? Well, Arab silver, for one, and all the rich trade goods from the East. We're talking furs, honey, wax, and, sadly, slaves. These Scandinavians, mostly Swedes, were masters at navigating the tangled web of rivers. The Volga and the Dnieper, they weren't just rivers. They were superhighways to wealth, connecting the Baltic Sea all the way to the Caspian and Black Seas, linking Scandinavia with the Byzantine Empire and the big Islamic caliphates. Archaeologists have found evidence at Staraya Ladoga, or Aldegjuborg, as the Norse called it, that points to it being one of their first major settlements, set up around 750 CE. This wasn't just a little trading post, it was a serious foothold, a real statement of their ambition. These guys weren't just passing through, they were becoming a permanent part of the Eastern European scene. Now, the local Slavic and Finnic tribes who'd been living in these lands for ages, they had some pretty complex relationships with these newcomers. Sometimes they traded peacefully, other times they fought. And sometimes, according to the almost legendary accounts in the Russian Primary Chronicle, they actually invited the Varangians to come and rule over them, to bring some order to a fractured land. The Chronicle, which was put together in the 12th century, tells us about these warring tribes who, apparently tired of all the infighting, said to the Rus,
Our lands are fractured. Our people suffer. We need strength. We need order. Will you lead us?
Whether it was by invitation or by conquest, and it was probably a bit of both, these Varangians started to flex their muscles. The term Rus, which first referred to these Scandinavian incomers, it might have come from an Old Norse word for men who row, or even the Finnish word for Swedes, Ruotsi, slowly became the name for the land they ended up controlling. They weren't just Vikings anymore. They were becoming the Rus, the ancestors of a whole new political and cultural thing. Their journey eastward wasn't just about expansion. It was like they were laying the very first stones for an empire that would totally reshape Eastern Europe. The traditional story of Kievan Rus often kicks off with a figure who's a bit of a mix of history and legend, Rurik. According to that primary chronicle we mentioned, Rurik, a Varangian chieftain, set himself up in Novgorod around 862 CE. This date is often thrown around as the founding of the Ruraki dynasty. back in over 900 years that would last for over 700 years. Now, historians still debate the nitty-gritty of Rurik's arrival, but whether he was entirely real or more of a symbol, his importance as a founding figure in the traditional Rus story is huge. When Rurik died around 879 CE, his kinsman Oleg, who was looking after Rurik's young son Igor, really stepped into the spotlight. Oleg was a guy with big plans and serious military skill. He wasn't just happy with Novgorod, he was looking south, down the Dnieper River. Around 882 CE, Oleg led his forces, taking over key spots like Smolensk and Lübeck. But his ultimate goal? Kiev, a super strategic trading post on the Dnieper. After kicking out the local rulers Askald and Dir, Oleg famously declared Kiev the
mother of Rus cities.
This move is widely seen as the key moment in forming the Kievan Rus state, shifting the power base from the north down to this booming southern city. Oleg didn't just conquer, he built. He started unifying all those scattered East Slavic tribes, making them pay tribute and bringing them under Kiev's authority. He brought tribes like the Drevlians, Polyanes, Severians, and Radimich into the fold, getting them to pay him in valuable stuff like furs and making sure their loyalty was to Kiev, not to other powers like the Khazars. Kiev, under Oleg, absolutely thrived. Its location was perfect, controlling not just the route from the Varangians to the Greeks, that's the Dnieper trade route to Byzantium, but also sitting at the crossroads of east-west land trade routes. This control over vital trade, plus all the awesome export goods like furs, beeswax, honey, and slaves, brought incredible wealth to the Rus princes and merchants. And that wealth? It paid for more expansion, stronger defenses, and a powerful army. Oleg's reign even included a bold campaign against Constantinople itself around 907 CE. Chronicles say it ended with a really sweet trade deal with the Byzantine Empire, making Kiev even more powerful economically and politically. Now, some stories about Oleg, like the one about a prophecy saying his horse would cause his death, sound a bit like myths. But his actual historical impact in building the Kievan state, undeniable. He laid the foundation for what would become a massive and influential kingdom. The groundwork laid by Oleg was seriously built upon by the rulers who came after him, leading to what's often called the Golden Age of Kievan Rus. This period, roughly from the late 10th to the middle 11th century, was all about major territorial growth, a blossoming of culture, and a super important event, the adoption of Christianity. A huge figure in this transformation was Vladimir the Great, who ruled from about 980 to 1015 CE. Vladimir initially supported Slavic paganism, but then he made a decision that would change Rus history forever. Around 988 CE, he adopted Eastern Orthodox Christianity. The primary chronicle has this great story about Vladimir sending his envoys out to check out different religions. They were apparently blown away by the sheer beauty of the Byzantine services in Constantinople, famously saying, "We no longer knew whether we were in heaven or on earth." Of course, there were smart political and strategic reasons too, like wanting an alliance with the powerful Byzantine Empire, which he sealed by marrying Princess Anna, the sister of Emperor Basil II. But the cultural impact? Absolutely profound. Vladimir's conversion wasn't just a personal thing. It was a full-on state project. He ordered pagan idols to be destroyed and had the people of Kiev baptized en masse in the Dnieper River, an event known as the Baptism of Rus. This brought Kievan Rus right into the world of Byzantine civilization, opening the doors to its amazing literature, art, and legal traditions. Churches started popping up, designed like Byzantine ones, and Greek learning and books became the new cool thing. The very first stone church, the Church of the Tithes, was built in Kiev, thanks to Vladimir. The Golden Age really hit its peak under Vladimir's son, Yaroslav the Wise, who reigned from 1019 to 1054 CE. Yaroslav was known as a great lawmaker, and he's credited with putting together the first written legal code of Kievan Rus, the Ruskaya Pravda, or Justice of Rus, which mixed Slavic customs with Byzantine legal ideas. He was also a huge builder and a big supporter of learning. During his time, Kiev became this magnificent city, supposedly as grand as Constantinople. He ordered the construction of the iconic St. Sophia Cathedral in Kiev, which had a major library and helped promote education. Yaroslav was also clever with dynastic marriages, linking Kievan Rus with other European powers by marrying his daughters and sisters to kings and princes from places like France, Norway, Hungary, and Poland. This really put Kievan Rus on the map in Europe. Under Yaroslav, Kievan Rus controlled a massive territory, stretching all the way from the Baltic to the Black Sea. It united tons of East Slavic tribes and became a huge cultural and political force. This era saw this amazing cultural blend where Scandinavian traditions slowly mixed with Slavic customs, all layered with the deep influence of Byzantine Christianity, creating a unique Rus identity. But as brilliant as the golden age of Kievan Rus was, it wasn't going to last forever. After Yaroslav the Wise died in 1054, things started to get shaky. The Rurikid way of deciding who became the next ruler, which often meant power went to the most senior prince in the family, not just from father to son, or involved complicated rotations between different areas, led to a lot of infighting and civil wars among Yaroslav's descendants. The once united kingdom slowly started to break apart into a bunch of semi-independent principalities, all fighting for the top spot. Then there were pressures from the outside. The Byzantine Empire, Kievan Rus's main trading partner, started to decline, which weakened those profitable trade routes that had been the lifeblood of Rus wealth. And those vast southern steppes, once kept in check by Rus princes, became more and more vulnerable to raids from nomadic groups like the Polovtsians, also known as Cumans, which messed with trade and made life dangerous for settlement. The final, crushing blow came in the mid-13th century with the Mongol invasions. Batu Khan's armies just swept across the Rus lands, destroying cities, including Kiev itself in 1240, which was practically leveled. This massive disaster pretty much ended the era of Kievan Rus as a single, dominant power in Eastern Europe. Many of the Rus principalities ended up under the control of the Golden Horde, kicking off a long period of Mongol rule for a big chunk of the region. And yet, the legacy of Kievan Rus was far from over. It turned out to be incredibly tough and super influential, laying the cultural, religious, and political foundations for the future nations of Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus. All three of these modern nations point to Kievan Rus as their cultural ancestor. That Eastern Orthodox faith, adopted way back under Vladimir the Great, became a huge part of the identity for these East Slavic peoples. The old East Slavic language they spoke in Kievan Rus eventually evolved into modern Ukrainian, Russian, and Belarusian. The legal traditions, the way they ran things, even the name Rus itself, it all stuck around, while the center of political power would eventually shift. With Moscow rising up in the northeast, Moscow very clearly claimed to be the heir of Kievan Rus. And likewise, the lands that make up modern Ukraine and Belarus kept strong cultural and historical ties to this foundational time. The Rurik dynasty, even though its power got scattered, kept ruling in various successor states for centuries. The shocking truth here is that this Viking-founded state, born on the river roads of Eastern Europe, didn't just vanish. It changed, its echoes bouncing through centuries of history, its DNA embedded right into the fabric of Eastern European nations. The arguments over this shared history are still going on today, which just shows how deep and lasting the impact of this medieval kingdom really was. The story of Kievan Rus is a powerful reminder that the Viking Age was way more complex and had a much wider reach than we often think. It wasn't just about longships raiding western shores. These Norse adventurers, the Varangians, also launched an equally bold expansion to the east. And they weren't just hit-and-run pirates, they were state builders. They carved out a kingdom that, at its peak, was a buzzing hub of trade, culture, and power, a real heavyweight on the medieval European stage. The creation of Kievan Rus was a game-changer. It was this incredible mix of Scandinavian energy, Slavic toughness, and Byzantine smarts. Its decision to adopt Eastern Orthodox Christianity shaped the spiritual world of Eastern Europe for over 1,000 years. Its laws and political setups provided a kind of blueprint for governing that lasted long after it broke apart. And maybe the most striking thing, the Viking-birthed kingdom laid the direct ancestral foundations for three modern nations: Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus, the echoes of its successes, its internal fights, and its eventual fall to the Mongol invasions are still there, woven into the complex story of Eastern European identity and politics. The story of Kievan Rus isn't just a tale of a shocking Viking kingdom. It's a vital piece of the puzzle for understanding the deep historical currents that are still shaping our world today. It really shows how the past reaches deep into the present and that the legacy of these Eastern Vikings is still unfolding. So what part of the Kievan Rus story surprised you the most? Let us know down in the comments. If you found this journey into a lesser-known bit of Viking history as fascinating as we did, please hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to help us keep making these videos, subscribe to the channel for more explorations of the past. Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. Till next time, keep exploring.
Hvað kveða sálir í valhöld fara